Good morning. I am Tracy Taylor, the Professional Development Liaison for Crew Detroit, and Gina Pendred is with me. She is also a member of the Professional Development Committee. So a couple things before we get started. I just wanted to remind everybody about some of the upcoming events for Crew Detroit. Tomorrow, May 18th, is the Hamtramck Small Business Tour. And then June 3rd is Mugshots and Martinis at Bees in Detroit. June 16th is the Path to Leadership for anybody who's interested or wants to learn a little bit more about leadership with Crew. And June 28th is the golf outing, and I believe the outing itself is sold out, but there are still tickets available for the social. So just a few things coming up. It's nice to see some activity. So welcome to our second Mentorship Monday program. These programs are developed by the Professional Development Committee, and they're part of the newly launched mentorship program. You don't have to participate in the mentorship program to attend the Mentorship Mondays, so feel free to invite other members to the upcoming ones, but we certainly hope that you do participate in the mentorship program. I know a number of you have already signed up, either as a mentor or a mentee. And hopefully everyone has started to reach out to someone in the program to begin to spark a relationship. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Today's topic, and probably one more. Today's topic is self-saboteurs and the most common ways we self-sabotage our personal and our professional lives. Saboteurs start off in us as children to help us survive real or imagined threats. By the time we're adults, we don't need them anymore, but they've become ingrained and invisible in our mind, invisible habits in our mind. So you can see on the screen, there are 9 common saboteurs. And some of you might see ones that you can relate to just by the name. But there's also kind of a master saboteur. And that's called the judge. And it's the judge in us is what eggs on these saboteurs to keep kind of trying to sabotage our lives. So these saboteurs have a push and a pull on our mind and on our ways of thinking. So your saboteurs have probably pushed you to improve through negative reinforcement and through negative thoughts. However, research shows that you will succeed more with positive reinforcement. So instead, if you are pulled by your positive feelings, you're going to be far happier and less stressed. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is these saboteurs. So now I'd like to turn it over to Gina, who will walk us through the different saboteurs. She'll explain a little bit about each and how they affect our thoughts and actions. So please think about which ones resonate with you, how they've affected you, and how or if you've been able to overcome them. As you hear more, we'll pause to take time to share how these may have affected you, and hopefully we can learn from each other. So with that, I'll turn it over to Gina.
Thanks, Tracy. So as she mentioned, this conversation is meant to be fluid and open. So please feel free to share any stories you have or interject as you feel comfortable. So talking about the judge, our master saboteur, the judge lives within everyone and activates your other top saboteurs, the 9 that were listed previously. So some characteristics of the judge include self-punishment by badgering yourself for past mistakes, focusing on what is wrong with others, and insisting an outcome will be bad. So justification lies that happen with that are basically your self-talk saying, without me pushing you, you will get lazy and complacent. Without me pushing you for your mistakes, you won't learn from them. And without making me feel bad about the bad outcome, you won't be able to do anything to change it. So how that begins to impact you is it creates a ton of anxiety, distress, suffering, and some relationship conflicts. And it can create feelings of guilt, regret, shame, and disappointment. Our next saboteur is the hypervigilant saboteur. So the hypervigilant saboteur is continuous, intense anxiety about all dangers and what could go wrong, vigilance that just can never rest. So some characteristics of a hypervigilant include always being anxious with chronic doubts about yourself and others, being extremely sensitive and constantly expecting danger, also being suspicious of what others are up to, and you may seek constant reassurance. So some thoughts about hypervigilant are, if I make a mistake, is everybody going to jump down my throat? I want to trust them, I just don't know their motives. I need to know what the rules are, although I might not fully agree with them. So that can become your justification lie or self-talk of, life is full of danger. If I don't look out for it, who will? How that begins to impact you is you will start to have constant anxiety and it will burn your vital energy. You then could also have the crying wolf syndrome with the credibility loss, and it may drain energy from others. So actually this was tied for first on my saboteur quiz. So it really resonated with me, especially in terms of the constant anxiety and feeling that it's taking a lot of energy out of me when I could be applying that to other things that could make me more successful. Our next saboteur is the hyperachiever. Hyperachievers are dependent on constant performance and achievement for self-validation, focus on external success, leading to workaholic tendencies and loss of touch with personal relationships. So characteristics include being extremely competitive, image and status conscious, cover up your insecurities and only showcase a positive image. You're also able to adapt your personality to fit what would be most impressive to the situation, being very goal-oriented and a workaholic, but also can be self-promoting and keep people at a distance. So some thoughts you might have as a hyperachiever include, you are worthy if you're successful, and then others will think well of you. I must be the best at what I do, and if I can't be outstanding, then why should I bother? And emotions just get in the way of performance. So that will turn into your self-talk or your justification lies, as life is about achieving and producing results, and feelings are really just a distraction and don't help anything. So that can be able to impact you negatively because your self-acceptance only goes as far as your next success. You then lose touch with your deeper feelings, and you can lose ability to connect personally with others. And you may just become too focused on performance and achievements. So I feel like there's a group of us that can relate to that, especially if you're working on a high intensity project. You want to do it well, you want to do it right, but you're not really realizing how it can impact you negatively and the people around you. So our next saboteur is the hyper-rational. The intense and exclusive focus on rationally processing everything, including relationships. So hyper-rationals are very intense with an active mind. Sometimes they come across as intellectually arrogant or sensitive, private, and they don't let anyone into their deeper feelings. They prefer to watch the craziness and really just analyze from a distance. They don't want to get too involved. And they may lose track of time due to intense concentration. So as a hyper-rational, you may feel like your feelings are distracting and irrelevant. Many people are irrational and sloppy with their thinking. And what you value most is knowledge, understanding, and insight. So you're really thinking from a data-driven set of mind. So that can turn into a justification for yourself of, the rational mind is the most important thing. It needs to be protected because people's thoughts can be messy, their emotions can get involved, and that doesn't get the work done. So how that begins to impact you is it will limit your depth and flexibility of relationships and work and in your personal life. You can lose experiencing feelings, especially in the moment. And you can also intimidate less analytically driven people. So people might not want to speak up with their thoughts because they feel like they're not essentially as smart as you are. Our next saboteur is the avoider. And I think everybody has a little avoider in them, because I can't say that anybody necessarily loves conflict. So the avoider focuses on the positive in an extreme way, avoids difficult and unpleasant conflicts and tasks. So with avoiding conflict, you're saying yes to things that you necessarily wouldn't want to do. You begin to have difficulty saying no. Avoiders downplay the importance of problems and try to deflect. And they also resist others through more of a passive aggressive means rather than speaking directly. So some thoughts an avoider might have would be, maybe if I let it go, the problem will go away. I'd rather not hurt their feelings by saying something. Or if we get into a conflict, I might damage my relationship with them. How that turns into really negative self-talk is, you're a good person to spare others' feelings. No good will come out of the conflict, and somebody needs to be the peacemaker. So with those kind of justification lies, they start to impact you by denying conflict and difficult tasks will prevent you from working on them and actually turning it into a productive conversation. Relationships can also become superficial through conflict avoidance, which then will lead to trust levels being reduced as people aren't really sure if you're withholding negative information. And then ultimately that will just become suppressed anger and resentment for you and others. Our next saboteur is the pleaser. So the pleaser tries to gain acceptance and affection by helping, pleasing, and flattering others. They lose sight on their own needs and become resentful as a result. So as a pleaser, you'll have a strong need to be liked by people and attempt to earn it by helping, pleasing, or flattering them. You would need constant reassurance by others for their acceptance and affection. And you have a hard time expressing your own needs and your own needs directly. So some thoughts as a pleaser would be, to be a good person, I must put the other needs of people first. And it bothers me when people don't notice what I've done for them. People can be extremely selfish and ungrateful. So some justification lies and self-talk that turns into that is, I continuously help everyone selfishly and I don't get anything in return. And the world would just be a better place if everyone did the same as I do. I know I personally at times will be frustrated when I feel like I'm giving something my all and someone's not returning that. So I think everybody here can resonate with that. But how that can impact you negatively is your personal needs aren't being met or put first. So that will create some resentment towards others. And ultimately, it can lead into burnout. So personally and professionally. And then the worst part is others will develop a dependence on you, making your job harder because people are used to you doing everything for them. Our next saboteur is the victim. So the victim is emotional and temperamental as a way to gain attention and affection, an extreme focus on feelings, particularly the painful ones. So as a victim, if you're criticized, you might tend to withdraw, sulk, pout. You are fairly dramatic and temperamental. You unconsciously are attached to having difficulties because you get attention by having those emotional problems. Some thoughts you may have as a victim include, no one understands me, or why do terrible things always happen to me? I think we all kind of have a little self-pity party every once in a while. But that will turn into a justification lie that you tell yourself of, maybe this way I will get some attention that I deserve. And that sadness is really a noble and sophisticated thing. And it's showing that I have a very deep understanding of my emotions and sensitivity. How that can negatively impact you is you waste a lot of energy on internally processing those feelings that you don't really need to have all of the time. It can also backfire by pushing people away. And then people can start to feel frustrated, helpless, or guilty that they just can't help you in a more permanent way. The controller. So the controller is an anxiety-based need to take charge and control of situations and people's actions. High anxiety and impatience when it's not possible. So some characteristics of controllers is they have very strong energy. They like to take control. They like to take charge. They connect with others through competition and challenge rather than emotion. And they're a little bit more confrontational. So they're going to be the straight talker that pushes people beyond their comfort zones. So some thoughts you have as a controller are you're either in control or you're out of control. And essentially you feel like you're doing everyone a favor because your hard work shows that you should control the situation, but you also want to control the situation so it goes your way. So some justification lies with that is you need to push people, they need to be pushed. If I don't control, I will be controlled. And I'm really just trying to get the job done for everybody. But what that can do as an impact to you and others is it can create a great deal of anxiety in your life and work because you're taking on so much. Others can become resentful towards you. And then you start to gain results at the cost of others. So you can take credit for other people's work, and you're really just taking all the hard work that the group did and just pushing it through as your own. Our next saboteur is the stickler. So the stickler is perfectionism and a need for order and organization taken a little too far. So this was my other tied for first saboteur that I really resonated with. And I'm curious to see if anyone else resonates with these characteristics as I read them off. So personally, being highly critical of self and others, being highly sensitive to criticism. So that's something I continue to work on. I was interested seeing it being called out in a quiz form. But sticklers are also very punctual, methodical, and they're perfectionists. They have a strong need for self-control and self-restraint. So very similar to our previous saboteur, but more about self-control than the group control. And they like to work overtime to make up for other people's sloppiness. So whether it's really sloppy or not, you feel like it is because it's not really up to your standards. So some thoughts are, right is right, wrong is wrong, but I'm the one that knows the right way. So if they aren't going to do it perfectly, then just don't do it at all. And you tend to think that everyone else has very lax standards compared to yours. So some justification lies from that can turn into, I know how things should be done and I'm going to do it right. And perfectionism is a good thing. How that can impact you is it will reduce your flexibility when it comes to change. It can create ongoing anxiety and frustration. And it can also cause resentment and self-doubt in others who are continuously criticized by you, no matter how hard they're working. So our last saboteur is restless. So the restless saboteur is constantly searching for greater excitement in the next activity or constantly busy. They're rarely at peace with the present. So some characteristics of the restless saboteur are they're easily distracted. They can get a little bit too scattered at times. They like to stay busy, juggling many different tasks and plans. They tend to escape from the unpleasant feelings that they have very quickly. They do not want to dwell on those. And they're always seeking new stimulation. So some thoughts as a restless saboteur is, this isn't fulfilling to me. The next thing has got to be better. Negative feelings suck. I really just want to focus on something fun. And why can't people keep up with me? So how you turn that into a justification lie to yourself is life's too short and needs to be lived to the fullest. And I really don't want to miss out on anything. But how those justification lies can really impact you in a negative way are they can create an anxiety-based escape from real issues. You can miss being present in the moment's full experience because you're always seeking the next best thing. You also will lose focus on issues and relationships that really matter to you. And you're unable to build anything sustainable because you're just constantly in the chaos. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy to talk about what the group saboteurs are, which saboteurs you found that resonate with you, how they affect you, and maybe some ways you've been able to overcome them.
Thanks, Gina. This is great. I hope everybody got a little bit out of it. I know, as I sit here listening, and we've been doing a lot prior to this on this, but looking at the different ones, and some of these are really, they can be positive attributes that we have, the hyperachiever and whatnot, but recognizing when those things start to sabotage us. So, and I I look at like the avoider, and my husband and I are opposite on that. And so, I'm the one to like give it a little time, see how it goes. And he's the one to quickly jump in and, well, I already did such and such. And then 2 weeks later, I'll be like, see, if you would have waited, it all would have worked. But the flip side is it also comes back to bite me because the avoider, if I don't do something, then I stress and lose sleep over it. Whereas if I would just bite the bullet and take care of whatever needs to be taken care of, I can move on. So how about everybody else? Does anybody have ones that really called your name? Anybody?
Tracy, this is Lisa Drulard.
Yeah.
I know I had looked at your guys' presentation last week and just found a small little typo and was joking, oh, I guess this makes me a stickler, right? And sure enough, when I took the assessment, that and the stickler and pleaser were my top two. So I guess that's the engineer in me. It was pretty spot on.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Does anyone have any solutions that they've come up with of, if you are hyper vigilant, what do you do to try to overcome that so that it's not dragging you down? Or as a stickler, is there something, have you found a way to bite your tongue when maybe you don't need to be a stickler? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Tracy, this is Joanna Jude.
Yeah.
I think we all suffer for some of these at various points in our lives.
For sure.
And I definitely recognize, and I have recognized my weakness even before I attended. So when this came up, I was very curious to make sure that, what is being suggested to deal with these. So my question is, let's say we identify what we are on this, in this diagram. Does the speaker have suggestions, or is she going to talk about how do you deal with these things?
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's a great point. So kind of going back to the slide that Tracy mentioned earlier is there's a few steps that we realized come with conquering these saboteurs. So they're always going to be there, but essentially step one, identifying them, to your point, understanding which ones kind of are ingrained in your mind. And step two, looking at the lies that they're telling you or the self-talk that you have around them, and then totally pulling that apart and discrediting it. With that, it'll start to retrain your style of thinking. So for me personally, let's see, go back here. As a stickler, I recognize that I have a little bit of an obsession with perfectionism and organization, but really reading how it impacted me, I feel that ongoing anxiety. I feel that frustration. I've had that self-talk, and really what I've done is, yes, I might be able to do things very well, but there are also people within positions that are able to do them just as well and maybe better. So what I've done is learn to try and take a back seat in some of my conversations and letting other people speak instead of being the first one to speak, thinking I have all of the answers. And letting everybody get their voice in the room. And then at the end, if I feel like I need to add something, I can. It gives me a little bit of that organization, but it's not fully reducing my flexibility like prior. So I think really, to your point, is finding these, your top 3 saboteurs and really seeing the thoughts and the lies that they put in your head and totally dissecting them and flipping them on the positive end of giving yourself that positive reinforcement that, these saboteurs aren't bad characteristics of us. They're only bad if we let them take that negative self-talk and run with it constantly.
I agree with you, and I do that. So it's reassuring to know that maybe I'm doing the right thing, I guess, to take care of some of the weaknesses that take place in our lives. But when I find myself being pulled into a certain direction, you know, to sabotage whatever it is that I'm working on, I just talk to myself and say, okay, you're not going to allow yourself to get drawn down this road. You need to sit still. You need to get this done. You need to turn your cell phone off, and you need to do this. And I find the more I do that, and I give myself small goals, the more I'm successful in overcoming some of the characteristics that you described, because I'm definitely guilty of more than one of the items that you've described. But I think just taking control of your mind, and saying, no, this is not going to happen. I need to focus. There's something much more important than having a pity party or whatever, so that's how I handle it.
I think you're absolutely right. And just identifying it and recognizing that that one of these characteristics is trying to sabotage you and run away in the wrong direction, I think is just such a big step, because once you identify it, then you can expose it and figure out how to work through it and talk yourself through it.
I think that's the key point, is identifying what's happening to
right.
you. Because I think we all can get sucked into so many different directions, because we all have so many things on our plates and we're trying to be all things. As women, we're perfectionists. We want to be perfectionists with everything. We don't cut ourselves slack. And I think you're right. Just simply identifying what's happening to us and trying to deal with it right on the spot. At least that's true in my case, with all due respect to the one male that's on the call.
Yeah, sure. So if anyone is interested, I think Lisa posted it in the chat as well, but this assessment takes about 5 minutes. And it's just a series of questions, and then it will come back and rank those 9 saboteurs for you and give you a little more detailed info about what we talked about today with each of them and whatnot. So we base this presentation from this Positive Intelligence website, which is where the assessment is linked to. And it's based on Shirzad Chameen's New York Times bestseller and some Stanford lectures. So I would encourage everyone to take a look at the assessment. I think it's super helpful. And it's also a great opportunity for you and your mentoring partner to center some just initial discussions around. So if you haven't already reached out to a mentoring partner, I encourage you to do that. And then this assessment could be a tool as a great starting point or an icebreaker to get that relationship going. So with that, I think we're within a minute of our 12:30 time. You're welcome to contact Gina or I with any questions. And if anybody wants to stay on and chat a little longer, we can certainly do that. But for those of you that need to drop off, it is 12:30 and we'll do that. So thank you everybody for attending. I hope everybody got a little bit of value.